I want to thank all of you for joining me today to recognize this very important day. This is Canada's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Just hold on one sec, my screen is jumping around here. For those of you that I haven't met, because I know we've got a lot of people that have joined the call, my name is Don Kotick and I'm the President and CEO of Sotheby's International Realty Canada. And before we begin, I want to just share a little story with you, kind of in keeping with First Nations storytelling kind of habits. Yesterday, I had to come up to North to visit my mother, and my mother is located on St. Joseph's Island, very close to Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario. And I told my mom that I needed to get an orange tie for this really important session today. Well, for those of you that know my mom, this would not be a surprise. For those of you that don't know my mom is 86 years old. And she said, well, wait a second, I have a better idea than a tie. She didn't tell me what she was doing. And she jumped in the car and she drove away. And so then a couple hours later, you know, she comes back and she has this vibrant orange kind of shirt that she's given me. And it's got a whole bunch of a phrase on the back. And in lieu of, and so basically what I have to do is give a special shout out to Luann Povey and her associates from the Garden River Child and Family Services for giving this shirt to my mother for me to wear today. And I'm not sure if you can see, there's a logo here. And the logo says it's Kogana Sa'in, which is the new child well-being law being implemented by the Anishinaabe Nation. The Anishinaabe Nation represents 39 First Nations throughout Ontario. And I want to thank them for giving this shirt to me for today's session. And so probably many of you are asking why the orange shirts, and I did verify this with Terry that a residential school survivor by the name of Phyllis Wobstad was given an orange shirt by her grandmother on her very first day of school at the St. Joseph's Mission Residential School in British Columbia. So when Phyllis got to school that day, they basically took away all her clothes and including her prized orange shirt. And the orange shirt was never returned to her. And so Phyllis said that the color orange basically has always reminded her of her experiences at the residential schools. Sorry, just admitting some people here. So Phyllis was quoted as saying, basically how my feelings didn't matter. No one seemed to care about me. And I really felt like I was worth nothing. And I guess she basically said, all of us little children were crying and nobody cared at all. And I guess as a result of living through this, Phyllis wanted to convey the message that every child matters every day. And she started Orange Shirt Day to educate people about the residential schools. And now, you know, some of the history for the orange, and that's why many of us right now are wearing the orange shirts. So we have to thank Phyllis for that. So now, I guess when we first announced we were going to hold this session, it originally was going to be an internal meeting just for our company. And I guess word started to get out that we were doing this. And we started to get requests from realtors who wanted to invite their clients. Other people heard about we were doing that and they wanted to join. So now this has grown from what was just going to be a company-wide event. There's a lot of people join us from a lot of different facets. And, I know we have people there. I see we have some people from Switzerland who we just mentioned earlier. I see we've even have some people that have arrived from Mexico. We have some people from the US and a lot of people have invited their clients and friends. So welcome everybody. We really appreciate you joining us today. And I guess in terms of housekeeping for today's session, we're going to leave the chat session open. We're going to mute everybody so there's no background noise that doesn't interfere as Terry is telling us about his journey. But please feel free to post comments and let us know where in the world you're coming from. If you have any questions, post them up, and after Terry is done, we'll basically bring them forward. I know that we have some people that are visiting us from the First Nations. We have some people from the Garden River Band, from the Sandy Lake Band, from the Lower Nicola Band, which is also where Terry is from, but some of his I guess fellow members are there as well too, and the Haida Galai, I'm not sure if I said that right, are visiting on the call as well today. So this is really growing into something quite special, and I think over time it will just continue to grow in the intensity and the importance of this. So this really is a day for all of us to remember the lost children and the survivors of our country's residential schools, and to honor the survivors' journey of healing, and to bring an awareness to the impact that this very painful chapter of Canadian history had on so many families and the communities today. Now, today is also an opportunity for us to be active partners in learning and reconciliation within our own communities, but also celebrate the Indigenous people in Canada. I'm not sure if you're aware, there were 140 federally run residential schools that operated in Canada between 1831 and 1998. The last school closed 23 years ago. These schools touched too many of our Indigenous friends and neighbors, and across too many of our communities. Understanding their stories and their experiences help us strengthen the bonds, understanding, connection, and values that all of us share. So on behalf of Sotheby's International Realty, I would like to welcome First Nation elder and medicine man, Terry Aleck, who is here to share his journey as a leader in reconciliation and as a survivor of the residential school system. So thank you, Terry, for being with us here today. But right now, I'm just going to turn it over to Alan Stewart, our Regional Vice President for British Columbia, to introduce Terry. So over to you, Alan.
Thanks, Don, and thanks everyone for being with us here today. It's a real honor for me to introduce a friend of mine and my neighbor, our special guest, Lytton First Nation elder Terry Aleck, also known as Coyote. I came to know Terry through my involvement here on the Sunshine Coast and his wife, Christine, and I'd personally like to thank them for sharing their time today and Terry's experiences with us. Terry was one of the first people to come forward with the repeated abuse he experienced through the residential school system, and he spent much of his adult life speaking his truths and seeking justice, not only for himself, but also for others. By sharing his experiences, he's inspired countless other survivors to speak up and to begin their journey of healing. Terry's been a courageous and compassionate leader in our community, and has been in the forefront of Canada's reconciliation efforts. So it's truly an honor for me to introduce him. Terry, thanks very much for joining us today.
Big shoes to fill. Wow. What an honor to be here. As I would say in my language for beginning of this day, Aleck Shinwanwan Shnuknukas. Good morning, my friends. It's an honor to be with you, to share a snippet of my life's journey. I'm 34 years sober. I carry 2 sacred pipes, one red one, one black one. I've run many sweats up and down BC, and I've been living on the Sunshine Coast now for 17 years. I moved here after my court case finished, so we'll get to that shortly. I'm going to start off with a song just to honor you guys for witnessing part of my journey. Was talked a long time ago to do an honor song. This is sacred work that we're doing. We're exposing the spirit of Coyote and all that I've done, and you guys are my witnesses for your own healing journey. So thank you. Yo ya ya yo ya yo ya ya yo ya ya yo yo that is honor song for, it's originally called the Chief's Honor Song. So I'm honoring all my ancestors for surviving what we've gone through as a people. And I carry that song with pride because that song is probably over 50 years old. And, you know, I introduced it to the Sunshine Coast, actually in Ottawa, for a ceremony I did with elders that were getting recognized for their work on truth and reconciliation. My journey began 1963. I'm living with my grandparents on my mom's side at Kanakabar, just 10 miles south of Lytton. My cousins and I and my siblings were playing out around the house, and we heard cars coming up a steep driveway. I mean, I think this little driveway is steep. Ours was even steeper at Kanaka and a dirt road. And my grandmother says, "Kids, go hide in the woodshed." A blue station wagon and RCMP were coming up. And so we went and hid, and she said, "Be quiet, don't say one word." And so the cars pulled up to the house, and it was hard to turn around there. So the RCMP comes out and knocks on the door and says, "We know you have school-aged children in this home. If you don't release them, we'll take you to jail." And they were saying that to my grandmother and my aunties and uncles. And so right away, my grandmother called myself and my cousin John Daniel and said, "Okay, you two, you have to get ready to go to the residential school." And on the side of that blue station wagon, it said St. George's Indian Residential School. And my grandmother was, I could see she was heartbroken by this already. And so John and I gathered our clothes in a little suitcase. And my grandmother also because we had traditional foods prepared, she put those in our suitcase as well. So we had food from home. And then as we're loading into the station wagon, she said, I'll call your mothers to let them know where you're going to be. Because we never seen our moms that much when we were little kids, because in our traditions, our aunties, our uncles, our grandparents would look after us. So at that time we were with our grandmother, and she was in tears by the time we jumped in the car. And but we made two other stops, one at below Kanakabar and one at Siska, picking up other cousins that were going to the school. And when we arrived at St. George's Indian Residential School, 3 miles northwest of Lytton, it was on Highway 12 at 3 Mile, they call it, and big red brick building. And station wagon pulls up and says, "Okay, get out." And it was the principal of that school that was driving that station wagon. So he went and parked the car and came back, and the 6 of us were standing inside the door. And he says, "I need to go through your suitcases." He took out all of our treats and put them away in his own office and says, "You'll get them later." And then he introduced us to our junior dorm supervisor, boys on one side of the building, girls on the other side, an auditorium on the same level as a principal's office, and boys' basement and girls' basement down below, of course, and dining room was down below. And they said right away, you cannot talk to your cousins. You cannot on the girl's side. If you do, you will be strapped in front of everybody. And he showed us a strap that was probably about that long, about that thick, and it had studs on both sides of that strap, leather strap. And some of us did get that whipping later on. We get to the junior dorm, and we'd gotten into the bathroom, and they had us take off all of our clothes. They shaved our heads, like mine short now because that's the way it's raised. But I used to have, after I left the residential school, my hair grew down to my shoulders, so I had beautiful, beautiful hair. And so they did that. They cut off all our hair. They put white powder in our hair and all over our body, and then they had us jumping in tubs, 3 to a tub, to clean off and wash off. And it's like, oh my God, when I think about that, you can see all the dirt and muck and the mire in the tubs. And and then they gave us clothes from the residential school that we had to wear. And then they said they had clothes for Sunday for church and other activities. So we had to put those in a locker in the junior dorm. And then our mom showed up finally, and they came up to the junior dorm. And it was really hard to say goodbye to them. My cousin and I, we both started crying, and of course our moms are crying because they knew they'd been there. They'd been to their residential school, and both of our fathers were at that school, as well as our grandparents. So 3 generations of us were in that building, and Mom and Auntie left, and John Daniel and I were crying our eyes out, and the supervisor comes in and she goes, try to stop us from crying. And she said, just get outside, go. You'll get over it. And we didn't. We never did. We get out in the playground on the boys' side there, and of course they had swings and another white building. They had grade 1 to 5 in a residential school. So in the white building, it was grade 1, 2, and 3. And above the classrooms of all things was the gymnasium. So when we're in class trying to study and whatnot, all you hear is just bouncing balls or kids screaming up top floor there. So made it pretty hard to study. I met a young fella, same age. He was from up north, and we ended up becoming good friends. And through the residential school. And then they had every supervisor had a bell. So when that bell started ringing, you had to line up outside before going into the building. And they would take us to the dorm, and there was bunk beds. So I think probably enough for 36 people in the dorm. And they would have us on our knees by the bunk beds, and they started teaching us the prayers. And if you didn't speak it, then that's when the whipping would start. Some of my cousins that showed up there were speaking the language that they were praying it. In my language, Yemit is prayer in our language, and they started doing Yemit in our language. And they would get whipped in front of us, in front of everybody. Not only in the dorm, but also down in the basement in front of all other boys, and saying, this is what happens when you speak your language. And we had to say the prayer before going down to the basement for meals. We'd all boys would get in a line, junior boys, intermediate boys, senior boys, and we all had to say the prayer before going into the dining room. And so if anybody didn't say it, all the supervisors were listening, and they would, they knew who wasn't speaking. And again, they would whip us in front of everybody until you cried. And I did my best to follow the rules, but sometimes it was challenging. Meals in that residential school were horrific. Just an example, breakfast, sour milk, and sometimes maggots with oatmeal. Like, really? And if you didn't eat it, you were whipped in front of everybody, even in front of all the girls, even, until you cried. And the lunches sometimes were moldy bread and moldy cheese, and we had to eat it. And if we didn't eat it, same thing, we would get strapped. And suppers were, I think, sometimes sauerkraut and who knows what else. I mean, meals were always different, and they weren't up to standards what I was used to of, living with my grandparents. And then we would go to school, and grade 1 and 2 were in the same room. So I remember my teacher. I actually remember them. I mean, she was from England. It's like, I know, I can still remember her name. And she was a decent teacher and didn't use them. Some of the teachers would use those yardsticks on us and not the straps to, to smarten us up. But that didn't happen too much in grade 1 and 2. And grade 3, that teacher was from Saskatchewan. I remember her. And she was the mean one, the real mean one. If you even looked sideways at her, she would whip you with that ruler. And, there wasn't one kid in that class that didn't get whipped, because we all rebelled at that kind of treatment. But they had that control, and they didn't take pity on us, period. So I was in junior dorm for the first 2 years of my young life. When I turned 9, that summer of 65, I was in the intermediate dorm, and I came back, and the supervisor that was there was fired because he wasn't doing a good job with the boys in that dorm. And so they imported somebody from Ontario residential school, and he was Caucasian, probably about 5'6", red hair, and he was a charmer, and he had a TV in his room, or a radio. And I think when he was imported to the school, it was in November of 65, and then that's when he started bringing boys to help clean up his room, and the door would close, and then we would hear either the radio up full blast or the TV full blast, and not a clue what was going on. And then I found myself getting dragged in there, and then I knew what was going on. The abuse started, and it went on for I think 6 years of my young life. He had no qualms about, even during the daytime, he would call the boys into his room, and the abuse continued. There was 2 summers that I was left there under his wing, and my sibling and I, and we were taken all over BC, and I didn't realize that my younger brother was being abused by this guy until years later, when the initial disclosure happened. And as this guy abused me even after I left the residential school. He followed, my dad rescued us. He said, "You kids aren't going here." 1969, he came up from Seattle, and my first time ever meeting my dad, he goes, "I'm taking you kids out of here. You're not going to go to this school anymore." And like, he didn't say why. It's just, but I know why. I mean, and that abuser continued abusing me in Seattle for the next 2 years that we're living down there. And, he, like I said, he was a charmer, and he could charm a snake skin out of its skin. And, it was so wrong on so many levels. As a kid, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. And, he would say, "Don't tell anybody." And so I carried that for years. I buried it. I stuffed it down. I got into addictions. I got into issues. In a lot of different relationships, was very mad at the world for what I had gone through. And, I lashed out at society. When I was going to school in Seattle, my stepmother owned a tavern down on First Avenue. My dad was a Teamster union member. There was always cigarettes and alcohol in the house. And so that was my introduction to addictions. It started there in Seattle, and I started smoking, going to school, and started drinking my dad's booze. Met friends in school that had a lot of different drugs in their homes. So I was getting introduced to a different way of life, and ended up in gang wars in Seattle. Our school would riot with other schools, and I had a lot to do with that because I was a nasty critter at that young age. I was lashing out. With a group of friends, we would go to other schools and throw rocks and just really do damage to other schools. And Denny Junior High rules, and it was just really, I was lashing out, and not realizing where that was all coming from. And the riots would happen at our school, and tons of cops would show up and, dismantle what was going on. I was in fights almost every week in school, and it was always with Africans and Caucasians. And when the fights would happen, they would happen in front of the school, and all the students would surround us and wouldn't let the teachers or anybody in until one of us would walk away. I always walked away. It's like, you're not beating me, because I was a little Tasmanian devil when it come to fighting. All those guys that I had beat showed up at my house Saturday morning, or sitting around watching TV with our folks, and curtains closed, and we hear this big bang on the window, our living room window, and I opened up and looked. There's 9 of them out there, and they had chains and bats, and they pointed right at me. "We want you." And just so happened I had a baseball game the night before, so my bat and gloves were right by the door. And My dad said, what are you going to do? I looked at him. I'm going out, Dad. I said, if I get hurt in this, you know, call for help. Not realizing two neighbors across the road were watching. One had his bat, one had a golf club ready. And so I go dashing out. I ran right smack in the middle of them, and I didn't stop. I did not stop swinging. Nothing touched me. Nobody touched me. I hit every one of them. And, you know, to this day, survival mode. And I look back at that and say, holy, you know, I was darn lucky, really lucky that I didn't get hurt in that process, because I was stuffing all that stuff down. Moved back to Canada to finish off school in Lytton, and I barely finished. My dad died in my graduation year from alcohol poisoning, but before he died, 1975, 1974, he came up to Lytton for his last journey, and we walked up Kanakabar Road, and we stopped halfway up, and he says, son, do something good with your life. Do something good with your life. Don't become a railroad bum or a logger, or, you know, do something good. And so I remembered that. And when he died, the principal and the counselor came to my house and said, you know, you're so close to finishing school. Don't quit. Don't quit. So I completed. And what did I do? I became a railroad bum. I learned how to log. I learned how to build log cabins. I was out in the wild and did many different crazy things in my life. And December 7th, 1986, living south of Lytton on a reserve called Boothroyd Indian Band. And I had a party the night before, and I come to with my 30-30 rifle up my mouth. And I'm looking down and I said, what the hell am I doing here? And I pulled that rifle out of my mouth, took the bullet out, put it on my bed. I actually got down on my knees and I said, Creator, God, whoever you are, show me a sign that you love me. Then I will do anything to smarten up. I thought I had the only key to that house I was renting. I hear the door unlock. A female voice, hello, anybody home? I said, yeah, I'm back here. And she comes in to the room, and I look at her, and she's an alcohol and drug counselor for that reserve. That's like 5 minutes after I said that prayer. And I look at her and I said, you just saved my life. I'm going to watch you dump all my booze, all my dope down the toilet. I need help. And so I watch her and she dumped, oh my God, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of stuff. And I said, I'm going to walk from Boothroyd to Lytton. And this is through the Fraser Canyon where the north wind bites right through you. I was determined to make it to Lytton. Cars would stop and you need a ride. And I said, no, I'm good. I'm good. I made it to Lytton, made it to see the alcohol and drug counselor for Lytton. I said, I need help now. I need to detox. I'm going through hell. I suicided earlier today. And so he got me to Kamloops Detox Center. And during the time I was in there, my brother John and his wife had twins, and one of them passed away. And he called me and he goes, hey, bro, I need you home. And I said, John, I love you. I'll pray for you. If I leave here, I know I won't make it. I need to do this for me. And whatever that looks like, I'll come see you when I'm done here in detox. And he said, good. good. So January, February 87, I'm in Round Lake Treatment Center to deal with my addiction issue. I get there, I'm quiet for the first 2 weeks, doing what I need to do, chores. 36 of us went in. And during that time, the 2 weeks that I was quiet, 4 or 5 got kicked out because they weren't working on the program. Every one of us get called to the main center, and head counselor, she goes, some of you are doing some really good work in here, except you, Mr. Aleck. If you don't start doing your program, you might as well pack up your stuff and get out of here now. My bubble burst. And then each of us were assigned counselors. So there's 5, 6 different counselors that we're part of. And I happened to be part of a female counselor and all female sisters in that group. And each of those rooms had boxer bags on the floor, as well as a pipe, plastic pipe that you could beat on that bag, get rid of your anger and rage and frustrations. And so I'm watching the sisters work on that bag, and they're talking about their own abuses and traumas that they'd gone through in their lives. And then our counselor asked, is there anybody else that needs to work? I stood up, grabbed that pipe. I started beating on a bag, abandonment from my parents, then the residential school thing came out. The abuse that I suffered at the residential school, and I got that anger, that rage, all of it came right through my body and nonstop for 45 minutes. I threw my back out after that. I got laid up. The counselor said, you're the first one to disclose about the residential school. I think you need to take this home, and if you have a therapist in your community, deal with it. And for me, it's like, but this is part of my addiction issue. I stuffed that down, and I listened. I said, okay. 4 of us completed that program in Round Lake, and I came home flying. I was like, man, nothing's going to stop me. I found we lit and had a family therapist, and I go to her and I said, Jan, I need to do disclosure about the residential school. She goes, wait. She goes, go down to the Thompson River and throw some rocks and get mad at this guy and come back 45 minutes later. And so I did. I would go down there and I'd clear a really big area of rocks, getting mad at this guy for abusing me. And I go back to her and she goes, interesting, you show up today and you want to do a disclosure. Do you know the name of the offender? And I said, yeah, his name is Derek Clark. Well, there was 2 investigators sent a message to all therapists in BC. If anybody, please, if anybody that wants to do a disclosure about this guy, he's still abusing kids and he's also abusing elders. And I looked at that and I said, wow, count me in. So the investigators came up and I met with them in RCMP station and I did my disclosure. I shared everything possible with these members, had them in tears and myself in tears. And the gratitude I seen on their faces, they said, man, thank you, thank you, thank you. You probably are saving many children and many elders from any further abuse. They get back to Vancouver the next day and they call up and they say, he pleads guilty right away. So court happens. He gets beat up from Vancouver to Kamloops because pedophiles aren't, they're lowest on totem pole. And for me, this was the golden nugget as a survivor of the residential school, that nugget was, I'm sitting on that stand and I'm looking at my offender in the eyes and I'm saying, I'm giving this all back to you. You created this monster and I'm giving this monster back to you. And I'm not going to carry that load anymore. Whatever kind of work therapy I have to do, I'll do it. But this is yours. And others stepped forward, but to disclose about him, but they didn't get that opportunity in the courtroom like I did. And so I really feel fortunate that it comes full circle for me that I get to face my offender, and I gave it to him. And during sentencing, the judge asked, Mr. Aleck, do you want him sentenced here in Kamloops or in Lytton? I said, Your Honor, it started in Lytton, let's end it in Lytton. They showed up and he was surrounded by tons of RCMP and sheriffs because word got out that he was coming to get sentenced in Lytton. And on that stand, he puts his hand up and he goes, Your Honor, I know I'm guilty of all of these abuses, but when my sentence is done, please keep me in jail. Because I know if I walk outside those doors that somebody's going to do me in. His sentence was done a few years ago and he's still in jail. And meantime, I do another journey. Social worker a couple of minutes. Social worker from tribal council says, what do you say you sue the federal government and the Church of Canada? We can do that. Yes, you can. So 17-year court battle. During that time, I was training as a family violence counselor, addiction counselor. I'm married, had 2 beautiful daughters, but they faced the anger and that stuff that I was dealing with in the courts. I would bring it home, and so my kids were exposed to that early. And we've done a lot of healing together over the years. And so when, after all my court stuff, like it started in Smithers and then finished in Vancouver, and the government lawyers showed up at my home in Lytton, and they said, they offered me a really huge amount of money. And I said, we can stop this right now. And I'm looking at them and I'm saying, oh my God, that would look good in my bank account. Oh, wow. I ripped it. You guys just overstepped a boundary here. How dare you come to my home where I'm with my family and we're enjoying time together on the weekend. Monday, you're going to get a good spanking. I called my lawyer up, and come Monday in court, the judge says to them, don't you ever do that to any plaintiffs that are dealing with the residential school issue. Don't you ever do that. You just helped Mr. Aleck's court case that much further ahead by your stupidity. The way he said that, it's like, yes. Oh, man. Anyways, May 31st, 2003, Mr. Aleck, you won. You won. Is there anything else that you would like from the court system before I close the case? Said, Your Honor, an apology letter from the Prime Minister of Canada would do me well. If you could do that, then we're good to go. And he wrote it down, an apology letter from Prime Minister of Canada. Done. I walked out of that courtroom free from this issue, moved to the Sunshine Coast, met a beautiful partner, Christine. December 9th, 2004. Dear Mr. Aleck, I write today in light of the settlement you reached with the government of Canada as a result of the abuse you suffered at the St. George Indian Residential School. The government accepts its responsibility for what happened to you at the school. On behalf of the minister responsible for Indian Residential Schools Resolution Canada, the Honorable A. Anne McClellan, and the Government of Canada, I wish to apologize to you and your family and to express the government's sincere and deep regret for all of the pain that you and your family have suffered as a result of your attendance at St. George's. I recognize that you have carried this burden with you for many years and that in some way you may have even felt responsible. I wish to emphasize that what you experienced was not your fault and should never have happened. You have shown considerable courage and dignity in coming forward to talk about extremely personal and painful experiences. I hope that by recounting these very painful experiences, you have a measure of comfort which will allow you and family to move forward with your lives. 2006, Prime Minister Harper did the full apology to Canada. And so I was already 2 years ahead, and that's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Oh, Terry, I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm speechless hearing your story. I guess listening to what you've said, it's obviously surreal for most of us. You're absolutely a courageous, brave individual. Your resiliency is off the charts, and on behalf of everyone here, we really appreciate you opening up and sharing your story with us. And, I don't think anybody was really prepared for, the story that you've told today. And my God, I'm just so happy that you've arrived at the place you've arrived. And, thank you so much for sharing. I guess, there probably are a lot of people on the call that would like to get more involved in the reconciliation efforts. Based on your experience, are there any organizations or any kind of groups that people can connect with to, get more involved in the reconciliation effort?
I know on the Sunshine Coast we have a group called CIA, Reconciliation Group. It's led by John and Nancy Denham and Gary Feschuk, who is the chief here in Seychelles. And that would be a good organization to help here on the coast, but across Canada at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission out of Winnipeg would be a really good connection, as well as the Indian Residential School Survivors Society of Canada, based out of Vancouver. And as well as myself, I mean, I've been up in the forefront for a long time, and I really feel blessed, that I had the courage to continue doing the work, even through death and dying and coming back and saying, I'm not done yet. I died a few years ago in Seychelles Hospital, and my family doctor was the one that was in ER and saved my life. And I look back at that. I seen my loved ones. I seen my mom. I seen all the elders and medicine people I've ever worked with. And, they said, you're not done yet. So my journey continues. And, I'm so grateful for having elder support through my whole court case. They were there outside the courtroom. They stayed 17 years of commitment to journey with me outside. And, I couldn't have asked for better support, really. I was gifted a red pipe. which is sacred to our people, our black pipe, which is my personal pipe. And I run sweats. I've connected with Seashell Nation in their residential school court case and actually helped them with their court case. Hey, here's a good lawyer that can help you. And the gratitude from the nation here has just been phenomenal. Like I really, I'm exhausted, but yet really feeling rich for being alive and making drums and sharing drums and teaching around the world. You know, I just feel so blessed to continue doing this journey, even at times when it gets so hard and heavy. It's like, I can do this. I got this. I've been doing this for 34 years of my sobriety, but I've lived it 65 years. You know, I turned 65 this year and I feel like, okay, my life's really just beginning.
Wow.
I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, I guess now I see there might have been was there a question? Taylor, did you have a question?
Yes, and thank you, Terry. I don't know, I couldn't keep it together listening to you. What makes it better moving forward? What can we do as individuals? What can we do outside of what has already been done to make things better for you and your people?
Listen to our stories, as painful as it gets, because that's when you hear the words. I mean, I've heard so many of my elders, even here in the Sunshine Coast, share their pain, and that's all they want. They want that acknowledgement from the broader community. And here on the Sunshine Coast, I think we're really fortunate that it's so, when we're on a peninsula, so we're not many people, I mean, when they come here, yeah, it's a different walk in life. And, you know, I'm grateful to be living here. Thank you.
Well, Terry, you know, I think on behalf of everybody here, you've absolutely given us a whole new understanding of, you know, this special day and what it means to everybody. And I think you'll see the messages. There's a lot of heartfelt love and appreciation. And I think everyone on the call, you know, feels, you know, feels the inspiration that you radiate and your bravery and your courage. And, you know, on behalf of everyone on the call, you know, thank you so much for sharing. This has been just an amazing hour and probably a life-changing hour for many of us to hear what you've gone through. And we're excited to see what you do in the future, because I know that we'll hear more about Terry Aleck in the years to come, and the greatness that will you know, come from the rest of your journey. So, you know, on behalf of everyone here, you know, thank you so much. Alan, did you want to say anything in closing?
Just thanks so much, Terry. It's always, yeah, it's very emotional. I appreciate your willingness to share and your bravery and your courage, and congratulate you on your sobriety and the impact you're having on the world. So I know it took me a while to learn what this means. Maybe you can explain it to us and we can end the meeting that way.
It's an honor of, thank you for being a witness of my journey. And you'll see that with a lot of our First Nation communities, when they raise their hands and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you for being bearing witness to our pain, and also bearing witness to our joy and gratitude and love. And thank you.
Yeah. Well, and the same back to you, Terry. So I think if we can all
yeah,
express our gratitude and honor it, Terry. Thank you, Terry. We appreciate it.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And Terry, thank you so much for everything today. And like I said, we'll look forward to a great future, and you shaping a new path for us all. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day. And we will see you all soon.
Thanks
very much.
Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye now.
Thanks, Terry.
Yep.